What to read if you are just starting out on a constraint-led approach? That was a great question in my comments from a video a few weeks ago. So here are my top 2 recommendations. The question was what research papers and evidence to read. My issue with research papers, this is my own personal issue with research papers, is I find it quite overwhelming. There's a lot of scientific background and information. I find it quite difficult to digest. So there's 2 books that I will recommend for you. Book number 1 is How We Learn to Move by Rob Gray. So Rob is a legend, a goat of ecological dynamics, constraint-led coaching. He does the Perception Action podcast. And his first book, How We Learn to Move, includes a lot of research papers and evidence-based research. And he breaks it down in quite simplified and easy to digest terms. And that's the first recommendation. I've read that book twice now, and every time I read it, I find something new out. Because the thing is with ecological dynamics, it's quite depth. It's quite deep. There's a lot of depth to it, and there's a lot of nuance, and there's a lot of terminology to read and sort of to learn. And not only that, as a practitioner, as a coach, but then to bring it onto the court is sort of as well. It takes time, and that's the first book I definitely recommend is How We Learn to Move by Rob Gray. And also check his podcast out as well, the Perception Action podcast. Again, a lot of stuff that he does is he'll read and go through the research papers, but then try and give it in a digestible format. So that's recommendation number 1. Recommendation number 2 is Transforming Basketball by Alex Sarama. Sorry, Alex, if I absolutely butchered your surname there. So even though it's a basketball specific book, Transforming Basketball, just change the name basketball to whatever sport you coach, to Transforming Tennis. And once again, Alex has a lot of research and a lot of evidence-based stuff within his book, but he breaks it down into quite simplified, again, digestible ways to understand it and read it. And again, Alex has a great podcast out called Transforming Basketball, and he talks a lot about the constraint-led approach and ecological dynamics. And again, as a coach, as a practitioner, bit like myself, but he's much better than me. He tries to make it relatable to the sport that he is obviously involved with basketball. But interesting, from speaking to Alex via DM a couple of times, he actually has a background in tennis. I think his dad was a tennis coach and he plays tennis as well, which is, again, I think he understands tennis. I'll leave a link down below to the 2 books and the 2 authors' podcast as well. The other sort of recommendation that I'd make, it's not quite a reading recommendation, but a podcast, and it's the Talent Equation by Stuart Armstrong. Again, Stuart is quite heavy within the research and the evidence, but again, a practitioner, a coach educator. A lot of his podcast guests will come on and talk a lot about the evidence, but also practical implications to it as well, and how you can take it onto court if you're a tennis coach and utilize that as well. So check out those books and the podcast, and until tomorrow, check out mytenniscoaching.com, and I'll speak to you soon.